hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, 1330 on the AM dial and 106.3 FM in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. Let's get started with another DC GOP lie. And, of course, it was with your money. Of course, I'm referring to the omnibus bill that was recently passed and signed by Donald Trump in what I consider his first major blunder as president of the United States. I understand that a lot of people are looking at other things that Trump has done, but most of the things that people are blaming Trump for or going after him for, Stormy Daniels, most of the Russia stuff, really had nothing to do with Trump being president. Stormy Daniels was a dozen years ago, and until somebody came after her with real money, more than she had taken from Trump's lawyer, she was willing to deny and had done so in writing that the affair had even occurred. Of course, the Mueller investigation is a bridge to nowhere. You already have other progressives, notably Van Jones, saying that it's a nothing burger. There's nothing there. The whole point of that is simply to keep something going to criticize Trump as he moves through however long his administration lasts. But Donald Trump made a huge mistake. He signed a piece of garbage. Let me tell you how big a piece of garbage this was that he signed. We have an omnibus bill that was put together by Paul Ryan, and someone is calling it, a number of people have called it, a complete sellout of the American people, masquerading as an appropriations bill. Let's talk about some of the things that bill does. It increases the debt. That's hardly a surprise for anybody who knows what's going on in this government. The bill codifies $143 billion of additional busting of budget caps, which Congress adopted in February for the remainder of the fiscal year. They're not going to cut back on that. They're just going to say we did it. This is on top of the fact that government spending has already increased $130 billion over last year. So we're not getting anything there. Oh, it underfunds the wall. The bill increases spending for everything, and you would think the president would get the $15 billion or so he needed for the wall. Nope. The bill includes $641 million for 33 miles of new border fencing, but prohibits that funding for being used for concrete barriers. Think about that. $15 billion and you get $641 million, but you're already $100 billion over where you were. Wow. It funds sanctuary cities. When cities and states downright violate federal law and harbor illegal aliens, Congress' silence in responding to it is deafening. Cutting off the block grants would have sent the message, but the Ryan Omnibus Bill does not do that. There's no interior enforcement funding. Clamping down on sanctuary cities, interior enforcement, if you clamp down on sanctuary cities, which they did not, interior enforcement is likely more important than a border wall. But they didn't give any more money for ICE. It doesn't defund the court decisions on amnesty. It doesn't contain amnesty, but we already have amnesty when you think about how the judiciary has been responding to the Trump administration. Congress is passing a budget bill. It does not defund DACA. They really didn't do anything with DACA at all, even though they were supposed to. And it doesn't defund the issuance of visas from countries on Trump's immigration pause list. So it doesn't do anything. Oh, it funds Planned Parenthood. Isn't that nice? Gun control. It gives you gun control without due process. Here's what we mean. The Fix NICS bill got in there, and that's going to pressure and incentivize state and federal agencies to add more people to this system, even though there's already bipartisan recognition that agencies are adding people who should not be on the list, including veterans, and they're going to do all this without any due process in a court of law. You are going to be presumed as not having the ability or the right to purchase or be in possession of a firearm, and you'll find out if you ever try to get a firearm. No one's going to come to you and say that your Second Amendment right has been taken. They're just going to take it, and then you got to go back and try to demonstrate that it should never have been infringed, even though the Constitution is clear. Are you following me on all this yet? They threw money at the opioid crisis, but there's no plan. None. What are you going to do? The funds are going to clamp down on legitimate prescription painkillers and create a national prescription registry so that the government can violate privacy and practice medicine. That's it. Meanwhile, the folks who are really causing the problems, the illicit drugs and Medicaid expansion, which is exacerbated by sanctuary cities, they're not touched. Oh, we're going to bail out student loans. $350 million in additional student loan forgiveness, but only for graduates who take lower paid government jobs or work for nonprofits, some nonprofits. So everybody who's not willing to take a suck job has to still pay that student loan. Now, of course, the government created this problem by letting these things in the first place. Should have never had government subsidizing student loans. That's one of the reasons college costs are so high. And another thing is, of all the things that actually got in this bill, Chuck Schumer got a local bridge and tunnel project in. Didn't get as much as he asked for, but he got $541 million in new transportation funding. Now, this upset Donald Trump tremendously, and his response to having to sign this bill, well, this is what he said.
Therefore, as a matter of national security, I've signed this omnibus budget bill. There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced. If we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever. President Obama signed one that was actually larger, which I'm sure he wasn't too happy with either. But in this case, it became so big because we need to take care of our military. And because the Democrats, who don't believe in that, added things that they wanted in order to get their votes. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule and go to 51 votes in the Senate if we're going to have really sustained, continued success. DACA recipients have been treated extremely badly by the Democrats. We wanted to include DACA. We wanted to have them in this bill. 800,000 people, and actually it could even be more. And we wanted to include DACA in this bill. The Democrats would not do it. They would not do it. To prevent the omnibus situation from ever happening again, I'm calling on Congress to give me a line item veto for all government spending bills, and the Senate must end. They must end the filibuster rule and get down to work.
That's a frustrated man speaking, and he is, despite his enormous talents and accomplishments up to this point, he's still a rookie, and he doesn't understand some of what he's saying. I'll just put it out there. This, to me, is a big error for Donald Trump. Let's break down some of what he says. He wants to get rid of the filibuster. No, you don't. What the president should have done was not sign the bill. And what his mistake was that he said, well, we needed this for the military. Well, the rest of the country is getting screwed. Where's the wall? Where's the crackdown on sanctuary cities? Please explain to me what good it does to have a stronger military for a moment while you're continuing to allow sanctuary cities, while you're continuing not to do interior enforcement on these things, while you're continuing to fund court decisions that go against immigration policy that you've set. Please explain to me what good it does to have a strong military if you're continuing to fund Planned Parenthood. The problem with Donald Trump on this is he looked at one issue, well, for national security reasons. There are no national security reasons here. You shut the thing down, because let's remember, a government shutdown is all it means is non-essential personnel go home, and we don't spend any more money than we did last year until we come up with a real plan. That's all it means. The political pressure is the issue. Nobody gets hurt with a government shutdown. All the employees that go home, when they come back, they get back pay. Donald Trump made a mistake. And his mistake was he allowed the Democrats to play him. He signed on for the military. He got hypnotized by the military, and he got screwed on the country. Now, for those who are wondering or may not be aware, this looks very familiar. When you look at the things that are in here, this looks very familiar. We saw this before in the 2015 omnibus bill, which was Paul Ryan's first major legislative effort as Speaker. It fully funded DACA. This time they ignored DACA. Why? Because now that the Democrats are out of power, dealing with DACA actually gives the Republicans power. Don't want to do that. Oh, they funded sanctuary cities back in 2015. No big deal, no change. All the refugee programs were funded. All the Mid-East immigration programs that the terrorists were using to get into the country, those were funded. Illegal alien resettlement was funded. H-2B work visas were quadrupled. Illegal alien tax credits were funded. And there was no money put in to complete 700 miles of border fencing that Congress had passed even years before. We've seen this movie before. This is the other criticism of Trump. How can you be surprised by something that the GOP in D.C. has been doing since every opportunity, beginning with the second Obama administration, the second Obama term? They do this every time. For you not to know this was coming, you're poorly served. I knew this was coming. And Laura Ingraham had a very good point. You didn't have to sign this. You could have asked for a continuing resolution and made them come back to work. The only power the president is supposed to have, we have people, every president that in my lifetime has had it in his mind that if he had a line item veto, that's a violation of the separation of powers in the Constitution. No, your bid is to protect the people with an all or nothing. Either you do things the right way or I give you nothing at all. Don't get in there and start bargaining. That's not your role. That means you're trying to write legislation. Stop it. You didn't have to sign it. You got played. Now, what does this do to midterm problems? I don't know. I'll be honest. I do not know. And there's a part of me is not really concerned about that. Because if you do what you're supposed to do, you don't have to worry about the midterm. You didn't. You funded Planned Parenthood. You didn't get the wall. You didn't get DACA, which you wanted, which the American people are just as happy to see go away. They didn't vote for you because you were going to make things easy for DACA recipients. That's not what happened. You allowed gun control to get in. You allowed them to put all these shiny objects, no, actually non-shiny objects. You allowed them to slip all this manure in the back door because they dangled a shiny object called more military spending in front of you. And now we're spending more money than ever before. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and the tax cut's going to hurt us. Bull crap. There has never been a tax cut in the history of the United States, federal income tax rate cut, that has ever done anything other than generate additional revenue. We're going to have the money, but we've lost the principle. Donald Trump screwed up. I'm not jumping off the bandwagon. But if he keeps doing this, then you're going to have to throw him out as well to get the American electorate program over. And I've said this, if I've said this once, I've said it 100 times. Donald Trump is not the issue. Donald Trump is not the problem. Donald Trump is not the solution. The problem, the issue, and the solution is the lack of resolve on the part of the American people to demand through the ballot box and through other means the government that serves their interests. If Donald Trump is not the right guy, you get another guy. Right now, I still believe he is likely to be the best option. But if you think that you can put Donald Trump in there, who is a rookie at this stuff, and then turn your back and walk away and think he's going to be able to steer this super tanker with a teaspoon by himself, you are full of it. You're going to have to get rid of some of your favored Republicans. Paul Ryan should go. Mitch McConnell should go. There are some others who need to go. And there's not a Democrat who voted for this thing who should be allowed to even sniff the halls of Congress. But for now, this is Donald Trump's mistake, because as president, he did have the option to protect the American people from this bill, and he did not. And it also lets us know once again that Paul Ryan and the D.C. Republican Party are really no less progressive now than when Barack Obama was president. Think about that as you go into the November midterms. It's time to primary some people and to replace them. I want a whole bunch of Republicans replaced. I just don't want them replaced with more progressives, either Republican or Democrat. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin. We'll be back right after this. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. I wanted to just continue on with the notion of the bill that Donald Trump just signed, the omnibus spending bill, being the first huge blunder of his presidency. It really is. One of the things you have to remember in discussing this is the pace of this presidency. Donald Trump is a man who likes to get things done. That's pretty obvious. He pushes to get things done, to get them done relatively quickly. That, coupled with the intensity of scrutiny and, of course, criticism of Donald Trump, has made this first year of Donald Trump feel almost as though it has been an entire presidential term, and we're just getting started. Now, I actually think that is a ploy of his detractors to basically wear out the electorate, try to just take down their patience. It's just so much, and make it seem as though it's just too much of a bother to have this man as president because of all the criticism and the scrutiny. I don't know that that will work, but it's an interesting tactic. But for you to understand my point about how big a blunder signing the omnibus bill was, I'm going to have to take you back to September of last year when Donald Trump was at the UN and delivered these remarks.
Be taken advantage of or enter into a one-sided deal where the United States gets nothing in return. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it. It is time for the entire world to join us in demanding that Iran's government end its pursuit of death and destruction. The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Their democratic institutions are being destroyed. This situation is completely unacceptable, and we cannot stand by and watch. As a responsible neighbor and friend, we and all others have a goal. That goal is to help them regain their freedom, recover their country, and restore their democracy. In America, we seek stronger ties of business and trade with all nations of goodwill. But this trade must be fair and it must be reciprocal. And our great middle class, once the bedrock of American prosperity, was forgotten and left behind. But they are forgotten no more, and they will never be forgotten again.
That was, in many ways, akin to me to a State of the Union speech. It was clear, it was powerful, it was also quite American, and the points were very concise. The United States doesn't want war necessarily with anyone, but if it is pushed, it will destroy North Korea. We can destroy North Korea. And Donald Trump called the leader of North Korea Rocket Man in front of the entire world. He did that at the UN. Very American thing to do, to tell someone who's behind you know you can kick, man, I will kick your tail. And to tell them that in front of anyone and everyone who might wonder who is the bigger person as far as fight capability is concerned. He goes and he rips Iran apart. Democracy, they're using it as a shield. The deal that they struck with Obama is an embarrassment, and it needs to be undone. The call for international condemnation, it's pretty clear. With respect to Venezuela, saying that it is crumbling. And also as part of that speech was a statement which was not included in that audio clip. The problem in Venezuela, these are Trump's words, the problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. And that was greeted with a loud pause. And then there was a smattering of applause. Because he's telling the truth. Also a very American thing to do. We know what you're doing to your people. We don't like it, and we know why it's failing. And then the trade message. Letting people know that the United States is not going to be taken advantage of anymore. And letting him know his reason for not allowing the American nation to be taken advantage of anymore is because of the impact upon the working people of the United States. They have borne the burden, and they have been ignored. And he's saying that's not going to happen anymore. Let me go back to North Korea. 3 days after Donald Trump made those remarks about North Korea, this is how North Korea responded.
A menacing message from Kim Jong-un on Friday, the North Korean leader vowing to make Donald Trump pay for threatening to destroy his country at the UN. In a rare direct statement to state media, Kim called Trump mentally deranged, threatening to tame him with fire, and saying he's considering, quote, the highest level of countermeasure in history. That may sound like a typically vague threat, but claims of what it could mean are chilling. The North's foreign minister apparently suggesting that Pyongyang could hit back with a hydrogen bomb rocket test over the Pacific. North Korea conducted its sixth and largest nuclear test earlier this month as it presses ahead with plans to build an atomic weapon that could hit the United States. Earlier in the week, Trump said he would destroy North Korea if it attacked the U.S. or its allies. But on Thursday, he seemed to change tack, signing an executive order that slaps even more sanctions on Pyongyang.
North Korea.
I'm not exactly sure how increasing sanctions on a nation that you say you can destroy is changing tack. But I get it. That was their response. Now you have to remember, we spent a lot of 2017 watching a series of North Korea missile launches over the islands of Japan, into the Pacific Ocean, test after test, and Donald Trump simply kept calling him out after every test, and you had different people, particularly in the media and on the left, who were all a Twitter, well, Twitter may not be the right term, even though there's a lot of commentary in social media, but they were all frantic. He's going to cause World War III. Donald Trump is going to get us all killed. Well, what happened on that? See, Donald Trump was right about North Korea. He was right about the fact that people who have been acting as though they are afraid of North Korea, even though they could destroy North Korea, has emboldened North Korea to do stupid things. Donald Trump is now calling the things that, you're doing something stupid and we can kill you. All of a sudden, North Korea now wants to have a conversation. They don't want to launch missiles anymore. They don't seem to be interested in that anymore. And Donald Trump hasn't had to take back one word of what he said about Rocket Man, because he was right. The Iranian deal shouldn't stand. It was a bad deal when it was signed. And at least half of the political people in this country knew it. Most of the nation knew it didn't make any sense to begin with. And Donald Trump basically said, you know what? We're dealing with a regime that is totalitarian. We're dealing with a regime that is dictatorial. We're dealing with a regime that hides its totalitarianism and dictatorial nature behind a facade of democracy. And they have a death wish. They intend to kill Israel. And what people don't want to realize is that before they can kill Israel, they have to take out the United States. And if they have a nuclear weapon that they can deliver, which is why they're developing an ICBM, to the United States, all you got to do is set off an airburst over Kansas and you would knock out almost every electronic device in our part of North America, which would cripple us, make us unable to respond to anything in a different part of the world and leave Israel alone to tackle all those Arabs. Donald Trump is right about Iran. And he was so right that Rex Tillerson had to be removed as Secretary of State because Rex Tillerson was not correct about Iran. Donald Trump is a very bold man, or at least he can be. But so far he's only been bold where he's been right. He's right about Venezuela. Venezuela is faithfully implementing socialism and it is killing their people. And I don't hear one Democrat or one progressive in these United States condemning what's happening in Venezuela. Do you? They're not going to condemn their own ideology. They want to see the same things happen in the United States, and somewhere in their demented minds they either don't care what it's going to do to the people of the United States or somehow believe the same thing that has failed since its inception on every continent and every culture and country in which it's been tried somehow is going to succeed in the United States. And finally, the message on trade. Let me go back to Venezuela. Donald Trump has not had a chance to move on Venezuela, and he's making his opportunity to move on Iran. Venezuela, as far as the United States is concerned, is less important than the other three things he mentioned. North Korea was trying to put itself out there as a threat to the United States or its allies. That needed to be dealt with. The Iran deal is an existential threat to the United States and to Israel. That needs to be dealt with. Trade, as far as the United States being extorted and having money extracted from it through unfair and non-reciprocal trade, that's a threat on all levels and needs to be addressed. Trump has dealt with North Korea and will continue to deal with North Korea. He has taken steps on trade and will continue to take steps on trade. By removing Rex Tillerson, he is beginning to take steps on Iran. And Venezuela will simply have to wait. With all that going on and all that positive momentum and that strong message that anybody can look up, why in the heck did you ever sign that foolish deal? And that's because he took his eye off the ball. What he said at the United Nations in September was Americanism at its finest. What he did in signing that monstrosity of an omnibus bill was kowtowing to progressivism at its lowest. It was a huge mistake. And the only thing you can hope is that he learns from it. He says he has. He'll never sign a bill like that again. My question comes back to this. Are you going to get back to the message that got you into the White House in the first place? Unabashedly American, bold, brave, and accurate. If he does that, then he can survive this huge blunder. If he continues to try to negotiate with Democrats, which he seems increasingly likely to do as his presidency goes on, he does not yet seem to understand just how committed they are to the failure of the country. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet Conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. The war on men continues without relent. We have dealt with the Harvey Weinstein case and the rise of the Me Too movement. Let me say this. I am not going to defend Harvey Weinstein's behavior. I don't really care. What I do seem to notice is Harvey Weinstein has not been charged with any crime. Despite all this hullabaloo, as recently as February of 2018, Vogue.com was writing an article that said, will Harvey Weinstein face criminal charges? Now bear in mind, he's been fired, his company's filed bankruptcy, everything's come tumbling down over allegations. Well, these allegations are true. It really doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Allegations need to be proven before you destroy somebody's life. Well, you're not caring about the plight of women. No, I don't care about the plight of women. I care about the plight of people. Harvey Weinstein may be a terrible person, but if you want to take him down for what you can prove he's done, not what you don't like about his behavior. Prove that it's wrong. And let me tell you something. When you benefit from your association with someone in spite of his behavior, and then only decide to have a problem with his behavior when you are no longer receiving the benefit, you are guilty of something just as bad as the person you want to accuse. You're a gold-digging hypocrite. Ashley Judd, Meryl Streep, Rose McGowan, and the rest. As long as Harvey Weinstein was giving you opportunities and making sure you got paid, then you had no problem looking the other way, along with the rest of the industry. You guys knew who he was and what he did. But now, since he's not able to do certain things, or you don't need him anymore, now it's time to throw him deep under the bus. Not bus, semi-trailer, semi-tractor, just tractor, just throw him away. Now it's good. There's something wrong with you. We have gotten to be a society here in the United States where all it takes for a man to have his life destroyed is some woman to make a random accusation. And now he has to go get a lawyer, and he has to pay all this money, and he has to have people thinking terrible things. His reputation is trashed and everything else. Well, that doesn't happen that often. Oh, really? Do you remember Brian Banks? Southern California kid, football player, local high school. He was a star football player. He was set to go to USC on scholarship, and then there was talk of him, if he did well there, going on to the NFL. And then one day the police show up at his door with a warrant for his arrest for kidnapping and rape. There is no evidence except an accusation by a young woman named Juanetta Gibson. See, that's one thing we have to get past. We need to get past the idea that women need to remain anonymous while they're lying about men. Juanetta Gibson lied about Brian Banks, who took a plea bargain to avoid a trial where he probably could have gotten more time, because in L.A. County, the woman's unproven allegation is almost tantamount to law. So he took a plea bargain, spent 6 years in prison until Juanetta Gibson was convinced to let everybody know that she lied. And there has been, as far as I know, no criminal allegations or repercussions for Ms. Gibson, whose behavior is clearly criminal. That's the interesting part about this. With the women's accusation, when they lie, what happens to the women when they lie? And this is no longer limited to the United States. Over in the UK, not that long ago, a gentleman named Ross Bullock was accused of rape and killed himself after a year of living under that cloud. Well, it's his fault for doing. Yeah, his behavior is his fault. But the woman lied about something that went to the core of who he was as a person. You're telling me that I'm a rapist. You're having people look at me as though I'm a rapist. Of course, that's not true. He wasn't a rapist. The story in the Sun, which is a UK paper, fake rape suicide. Forklift driver, 38, just a forklift driver. He's not a star. You don't have to be a star. Brian Banks was not a star. He was a high school kid. This guy's a forklift driver. Killed himself after being falsely accused of rape, despite texts that proved the sex was consensual. Well, the woman can change her mind. That's the problem. You don't get to go after the fact and say what you agreed to. Well, now I really didn't think that was good, and I was violated. Get out of here with that foolishness. Because that's exactly what it is. So it's not just limited to the United States. It's not just something that happened to Harvey Weinstein. It's not something that happened to Bill Cosby. This goes back decades with both Cosby and Weinstein. Guess who else it hits? Russell Simmons. People.com published an article back in January. 16 women accuse music producer Russell Simmons of sexual misconduct. Wow. From inappropriate behavior in business meetings to attempted assault in a woman's restroom in New York City during a night of partying to rape at his apartment, the accusations span more than 3 decades. Do you see how this is? The bigger they are, we just start lining up folks against them. This whole thing, to me, started back in 1990, I believe it was, with Anita Hill lying about Clarence Thomas. And put up to that lie by Dead Kennedy, who has his own problems, which are finally coming out in the movie. We're finally going to hear about Chappaquiddick in a movie. 50 years almost after it happened. How convenient. Dead Kennedy has been dead since 2009. Now you want to tell the story? Okay. But Russell Simmons has people making accusations against him. He's 60 years old. This stuff goes back to when he was in his 30s, in his late 20s. Here is his statement. I am blessed to have shared extraordinary relationships, whether through work or love, with many great women. I have enormous respect for the women's movement worldwide and their struggle for respect, dignity, equality, and power. Let me stop right there and give you my own personal take. I don't believe a word of that as far as his enormous respect thing, and here's why. Hip-hop does not now, has never, and will never respect women. It will objectivize them. That's all. It's all it's ever going to do. It's going to make merchandise of them, like every other part of the entertainment industry. But I don't fault men for that. I fault women for allowing themselves to be objectified for the promise of money. Your dignity has a price tag, and that is the issue with women in Western culture and in some other cultures as well. You're willing to sell your body. You're willing to use your sexual appeal so that you can get paid, so that you can actually get a financial or material advantage based on what you have to offer physically, rather than based on your ability to work or to produce. Well, these women, look, Beyonce can't sing. I don't care who tells you different. She can't sing. I can tell you some black women who can sing. She's not one of them. Rihanna, no. But these people are doing well. And I don't begrudge anybody their money. Anyway, back to his statement. I am devastated by any reason I may have given to anyone to say or think of me in the ways that are currently being described. In recent weeks, some former business, creative, and romantic partners have aired grievances as claims I categorically reject. In some of these instances, financial motives and direct contradictory witness testimony has been supplied to the media, which has been completely left out of stories. Let me make sure you break that down. When you find somebody accusing him for and there's a financial motive attached, if you sit there and listen to my allegation, I might get some money. He might break me off just to settle this thing so I get money. He didn't deal with it. Contradictory witness testimony. All this has been supplied, and the media ignores it both. They never check these women the way they go after the men they accuse. The accuser is the one whose validity should be checked. The validity of their statement, and if nothing else, the validity of their person. Who are you to make this accusation? What evidence do you have? And if there's evidence that contradicts you, why should I be entertaining your statement? We don't have that going on in this society right now. In the last few days, one woman attempted to extort me for $500,000 only to recant her ridiculous claim. Most recently, we had a woman come out against Russell Simmons with a $10 million lawsuit claiming rape. The likelihood that it is true, given the way women in and around hip-hop behave, I think a snowball has a greater chance of surviving in the sun's corona. But they're going to take Russell down for whatever reason. And this nonsense that people are doing doesn't just stop with going after individual men. People are going after countries with this whole guilty by association. Last part of his statement from Russell Simmons. The presumption of innocent until proven guilty must not be replaced by guilty by association. Back to the op-ed by Robert Bridge, guilty until proven innocent mantra going on in the West. This is actually now something that you see happening internationally. The West has been accusing the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, since the Obama administration for using chemical agents against his own people. They're saying, I think at least twice, that they've said he has used gas, some type of chemical agent, against his own people in the civil war that's occurring there. Here's the problem. In both cases, the people on the ground are saying it ain't him. UN investigators show up and talk to the people, and they tell them clearly, this is not the government, this is the rebels. However, it's not reported that way. And now the Trump administration is towing that same, I believe, errant line. Why would the people of Syria lie about their government? Well, they're covering up for them. Okay, but the people who want to take down the government, who have an association with terror organizations, they're not capable of this stuff, of course. Only the Syrian government would do this to their own people. But the people try. Seriously? It doesn't make sense, and the fact that the people on the ground in Syria have told UN investigators on 2 occasions it was not the government, and that gets ignored. That's a problem. This same thing is going on now in the UK and Russia, because the assassination attempt made against Sergei Skripal, who was a double agent who had moved to Salisbury, England, following a spy swap in 2010. Now, the British authorities have ruled without a trial, without evidence, or any motivating factor that Russia tried to kill him. And they are pushing that narrative hard. This war on men has become a war on nations led by men. Led by strong men, by the way. When I say strong, I'm not saying that pejoratively. Bashar al-Assad may not be your choice for the Nobel Peace Prize, but he is a strong leader. Vladimir Putin, of course, whose name is mud, at least among the American media and other places around the world, and there is reason to have issues with Vladimir Putin, don't get me wrong. But Vladimir Putin has denied, and there has yet to be proof that he unduly influenced the American election in 2016. You say, I said, you know what? Russia and everybody else has been trying to influence elections in the United States long before 2016. But the idea that they've done it is something that even Barack Obama dismissed the month before the 2016 election. Said, I don't believe anybody even could. That would include Vladimir Putin. Here's the problem. You can't keep doing this stuff to people. You're going to break down all of society, not just in the United States, but throughout what is known as the West. And there's a reason for that, because if the West falls, then the whole idea of individual liberty of any kind is gone, and the globalists win. You need to stop this. You need to tell all the Me Too crowd, I'm not with you until you bring proof of your allegation. You need to spread that throughout society and spread that throughout international relations. It is reckless for you to go out accusing people of stuff just because it suits your political narrative when you cannot prove a thing. And I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Illegal immigrant advocates say that Ohio is among the worst states for illegal immigrants. And I guess that makes Ohio one of the best states for legal immigrants. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, recently, illegal immigrant advocate Lynn Tremont cried the blues on behalf of illegal border crossers. Illegal border crosser advocate Lynn Tremont does not like Ohio's police and state cooperation with federal officials. The effort to deport illegal border crossers infuriates advocates like Tremont, who place illegal border crossers in higher regard than our national sovereignty, or American-born victims of illegal border crossers who rape, rob, shoot, and beat to death many Americans every single year. ICE spokesman Khalid Walls reminded Tremont that ICE is focused on removing public safety threats, such as convicted criminal illegal immigrants, gang members, and those who continue to illegally re-enter our country after being removed. For those of you who scream to high heaven, gnashing your teeth over families being broken up when illegal immigrant dads or moms are booted out of the republic, I have the logical solution. Simply send the entire family with the illegal border crosser parent out of the country together. Problem solved. Bye now. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin' here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, we've had a police shooting, which happens about 1,200 or so times a year in the United States out of the anywhere from 40 to 60 million interactions between the public and law enforcement. This time we're looking at one in Sacramento that happened, I believe, on the 18th of March. Now, CBS News wrote a report. This was actually reported on the 21st. Relatives, activists, and Sacramento officials are questioning why police shot an unarmed black man 20 times, killing him when he turned out to be holding only a cell phone in his grandparents' backyard. If you don't pick up the bias in that already, well, the cops are wrong. Okay. Police in Sacramento released new video of the shooting. Officers said they thought he had a gun, but he was holding a cell phone. Relatives have identified the man as Stefan Alonzo Clark. According to the Sacramento Bee, his fiancée, Selena Manny, and the mother of his sons, ages 1 and 3, said his first name was Stefan. It was misspelled. We're mourning right now, so we need our time to mourn. Two arriving police say the man was spotted breaking at least 3 vehicle windows Sunday night. Sheriff's deputies in a helicopter say they saw him breaking a neighbor's sliding glass door. So whoever this was that they saw was engaged in criminal activity. 2 arriving officers chased him into the backyard of his grandparents' home where he was staying. The department says he refused orders to stop and show his hands. He advanced toward the officers, holding an object extended in front of him. The department said the officers thought he was pointing a handgun and opened fire, fearing for their safety, the department said. In all, police fired 20 shots. There were more than one cop there, by the way. No gun was found, and only the cell phone was found near his body when more officers arrived and approached him about 5 minutes after the shooting, the department said. So everything in this story is set up in the first paragraph for you to say that the police are wrong. Now, interestingly, the New York Times, of all sources, actually put out a video or an audio, for me it's audio, of course, of what actually happened on the night that the gentleman was shot.
Sacramento police released video of the shooting death of Stephen Clark, who was shot by police in his backyard.
Show me your hands! See your hands!
He was unarmed. Here's what police body camera and helicopter footage shows.
911, what's location of the emergency?
Guys going down the street breaking windows of cars. He busted both my truck windows out. He busted in the people's backyard right now.
8 minutes later, officers arrive at a house in the area.
Can we check your backyard real quick? Supposedly somebody just broke some windows over here. I got this corner if you want to fan that way real quick. Yeah.
At this point, it's unclear where the suspect is.
He didn't come this way.
Moments later, the helicopter alerts the officers that they've spotted an individual.
Running to the south.
This is 22-year-old Stephen Clark. They run to Clark's home. The officers spot Clark.
Hey! Show me your hands! Stop! Stop! Flash them south.
At this moment, Clark moves toward the officers.
Show me your hands! Gun!
Then Clark drops to his hands and knees. They continue to fire.
5-7 shots fired, 7 down. Show me your hands! Let's see your hands!
2 minutes and 50 seconds later, the officers try to communicate with Clark.
Hey, can you hear us? Police department, can you hear us?
We need to know if you're okay. We need to get you medics, but we can't go over there and get you help unless we know you don't have the weapon.
5 minutes after the last bullet, they go check on him.
If one of you guys want to go hands, cover him.
There was a cell phone next to Clark's body. No guns were found. Officers involved have been put on paid leave as district and city attorneys investigate.
Tragic situation. No argument there. Let's recap this. We have a 911 call coming in about nighttime activity. It's night. We have someone breaking into car windows, and we have the police in a helicopter observing him breaking a sliding glass door. Police arrive on the scene, trying to locate him at night. The helicopter sees him with infrared vision on a camera, and they direct the officers to him. He runs, so he's running from the police at night. Wow. And runs to his grandparents' home, where apparently he was staying. And the police confront him there. You heard, stop, show me your hands. No shots were fired then. He kept running until he got home. Then he turns and faces the officers and walks toward them with something in his hand and his arm extended. It's nighttime. I've been chasing this guy. He didn't obey my commands. So now when he walks toward me with something in his hands after I've told him to stop, I'm supposed to what? Wait to see what he has in his hands? That's a good way to get a cop shot. And I don't pay police to take fire from those they're trying to apprehend, particularly when this guy is believed to have committed a crime and there's visual evidence and police observation of him doing just that. Now, let's continue with the more dispassionate view of this. An expert in police-involved shootings actually looked at the available video evidence, and you heard much of it, not all of it, but he looked at it. He's got 34 years of experience. Here was his take on what occurred.
Daniel Hahn says that the department will conduct a thorough investigation into the fatal shooting of Stephon Clark. An expert in officer-involved shootings who watched that body camera video with us today said that given the circumstances, any officer could have reacted that way.
There's about a 1 to 2 second delay before the first shots.
Ryan Getty, a police officer of 34 years and an assistant professor at Sacramento State's Division of Criminal Justice, reviews the helicopter and body camera footage released in the fatal shooting of Stephon Clark.
My initial reaction is I could easily see it happening to any officer.
Getty says the body camera video shows the physiological effects of chasing a suspect.
He started running towards the scene, which automatically, physiologically, starts to get the heart rate increasing, the blood pressure increasing.
The career officer and teacher says that can lead to tunnel vision.
Sensory perception starts to go. Officers may get tunnel vision. I'm not saying that officer did, but typically officers start to get tunnel vision, stressed. Their fine motor skills start to go.
In the midst of the chase, an officer shouts his command. The suspect, Clark in this case, is out of sight, and Getty says officers don't know what he might do next or whether he may be armed. They see what they believe is a weapon, leading to shots fired.
Most of them have told me they fired 2 or 3, at the most 5, when they've fired 10, 15 rounds.
Chief Daniel Hahn calls the situation tragic and says the department will conduct a thorough investigation as the public gets the chance to view the videos.
Where there's a void of facts, people fill those facts in, and oftentimes because they weren't there, they're not accurate. Now with a video, somebody can watch it themselves and they see visually for themselves what happened.
And we asked Chief Daniel Hahn about the portion of the video where you hear the officer turn off the audio on his body camera. Chief Hahn says he doesn't know why the officer did that, but that will be a part of the investigation. Reporting live in Sacramento, Max Resnick, KCRA 3 News.
So, a 34-year veteran of police and someone who's actually teaching looks at this thing and says, I can see it. To be honest, I'm not an expert in law enforcement at all. Watching and observing what the New York Times put together, I'm like, you know what? That's a good way to get shot. To be out breaking windows so that the police are even called to your location. Observed breaking a sliding glass door. And then running from the police so they have to chase you. And then you come to some place, stop, and when they're telling you to stop because they're trying to apprehend you, you walk toward them with something in your hand at night. And they're supposed to suppose that it's a cell phone or that it's not a gun, would you? I don't think so. So they shot him. Now, of course, the cops are human beings, so that it's not like they're dispassionate. This isn't RoboCop here, where you just come across a guy and you just pop off. It's like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on with this guy. This guy has emotions. He's running. I'm running. I don't know what's going on. But not unexpectedly, the activists have shown up with their predictable response.
Last Thursday, thousands of Kings fans were literally shut out of the Golden One Center as protesters linked arms around the arena, preventing anyone from getting in or out. Today, though, a very different story, with protests coming right to Kings Court. On the NBA court today, a Kings player sporting a T-shirt that says "Accountability, we are one" on the front and hashtag Stephon Clark on the back. It's a show of support from the team for the 22-year-old man who was killed by police 1 week ago today, following reports of a suspect breaking into cars and breaking a window in a South Sacramento home.
You perpetrate this kid as a criminal when you're saying he's breaking into homes, but, you know, if anyone's breaking into homes, that don't mean they deserve to be executed.
The video released by police shows officers firing 20 times at the young man who died in the backyard of his grandparents' home. He was unarmed, holding only a cell phone.
Say his name!
The incident has sparked outrage and anger in the community.
And we're going to stick with the narrative of why did the police use excessive force.
Community activists say they want reforms in the ways police interact with the community.
We are here to talk.
And today we got this response from the Sacramento police.
Well, obviously this is a very tragic event, and with a tragic event, ideally we take something that we could all learn from, and with that we're going to be open to all discussions.
And we're looking at live pictures now of the Golden One Center as fans start to stream towards the exit. So what happens next in this ongoing drama? Well, tomorrow, civil rights attorney Ben Crump is coming to Sacramento. He's representing the Clark family. He's also represented in the past representatives of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and Tamir Rice, three young men who also died after interactions with the police. On Tuesday, hundreds of people say they'll be traveling to Sacramento City Hall to leave a message there about the protests and what they want to have in the way of police reforms. And then, of course, Thursday is the funeral of the young man, which will be attended by the Reverend Al Sharpton. Reporting live in Sacramento, Mike Lurie, KCRA 3 News.
A lot to follow this week, Mike. And going back to those reforms, what types of changes are they looking forward to seeing?
Well, two things specifically. One, they're demanding that there be mandatory drug testing for officers involved in shootings. And secondly, they want to have reform in terms of who represents the police force. They say they want to have officers who are more in line with the community and not afraid of the people that they serve.
All right,
more on that coming up tonight at 6.
All right, Mike Lurie this evening. Thanks for that live report.
Well, let's start with the reforms. A drug test after a shooting? I don't see anything unreasonable about that. Make sure that you're okay. We want people who aren't afraid of the folks that they're policing. I want to know who's not going to be afraid of someone who's breaking into houses at night and you don't know whether or not he has a gun. I want to know who that is. And I want to know where you get this information. Now, the other thing that you get from this is when this first happened, the activists basically barred people from entering the arena in which the Sacramento Kings play. So your protest is designed to disrupt other people's lives. Why is that? Because, see, I guarantee you that white people get shot in Sacramento, and I don't remember the activists linking hands so that people couldn't go see a Sacramento Kings game at those times. As a matter of fact, you got to remember something about the whole idea of black unarmed police shootings. First of all, was it reasonable for the police to believe that he was unarmed? Not necessarily. Not in this case. It was not. Also, let's talk about police shootings in general. The Guardian in the UK, for a couple of years, kept a database. They called it The Counted, where they documented meticulously everyone who was shot by police in the United States. In 2015, they showed that 1,146 people were killed by police, shot and killed by police. Not necessarily shot, but killed. 307 of those were black. 307. Now, of course, blacks kill 6,000 or more black people every year, but we need to talk about these 307. By the way, 584 white people were killed by police in 2015. I don't remember seeing a whole bunch of White Lives Matter protests. In 2016, there were 1,093 deaths that the Guardian meticulously recorded of the cops killing different people. 266 of them were black. 574 of them were white, more than twice as many. But I don't recall that many news stories. I don't recall anything. I guess that every time a white person is killed by police, it must be justified because it's never reported on, and I don't see any activists, and I don't see any protests. I don't see any of that. But it's not what you think. It's not what you think with this guy either. It really isn't. This guy was committing a crime. Now, the whole idea of the action said, we're going to go with the narrative, and that's all you needed to hear. We're going to go with the narrative of excessive force. I don't know that it's excessive force. I guarantee you this. Well, let me just change that. I predict this. They're going to look at this. They're going to look at this evidence, and it's going to be unlikely that you're going to see an indictment. Not impossible, but unlikely. If there is an indictment, if it is anywhere near an impartial jury, you're not going to see a conviction on any charges. Now, the other thing I noticed, Will Sharpton's going to be there, and his ace boon coon attorney, Benjamin Crump. Did you notice the lie that the reporter told, that Trayvon Martin died at the hands of police? He did not. That's part of the narrative now. That Trayvon Martin was among those unarmed black men who were killed by police. Cops had nothing to do with his death. But they still put this stuff out here. Let's break this thing down very clearly in terms that it's going to show up in a courtroom. We have evidence that we can show and that we can verify that Stephon Clark was committing crime in a Sacramento neighborhood in which he lived. Police were called because citizens reported that crimes were being committed. It is illegal to go around breaking vehicle windows, particularly when the vehicle does not belong to you. It is a crime to go in breaking sliding glass doors on homes of people. Well, it's not your home. Those are crimes. And the police come to investigate that. For you to run from the police, guess what? They're going to chase you. When they stop you, they're going to look to apprehend you. They're going to expect that you do not resist that attempt to apprehend you. The fact that you've run has already thrown that out the window. If you're running, you are resisting. Now, once they catch you and they tell you to stop, and you don't stop, you're creating a problem for yourself. When you finally do stop and you turn, they don't want you to come toward them. They want you on the ground, and everyone knows that. When you decide to stop and face them, not get on the ground, walk toward them with something in your hand, that is almost suicide by cop. That's how it's going to go down. That is how it's most likely going to go down. They're unlikely to be charged, and if charged, they're not going to be convicted, because this dude who got himself shot, as tragic as that is, you need to question him about why he put himself and the police in that situation long before you question the reaction of the police to that situation. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. And I am giddy about this next topic. The quintessential, or one of the quintessential social justice warriors in sports has been demonstrated again as being a low character individual. He's been indicted, and this is how it's being reported.
Well, Mia, as far as we know, Michael Bennett is still free. Houston police, however, are already talking with his attorney. At a press conference about an hour or so ago, the police chief point blank saying, Michael Bennett, turn yourself in or we'll come looking for you.
Mr. Bennett may think that because he's an NFL player and because some time passed, because we have to prioritize our cases, he may have thought that, number one, rules don't apply to him.
More than a year after Houston police took the report, a Harris County grand jury just indicted 32-year-old Michael Bennett. He's accused of injuring a 66-year-old paraplegic woman who was working crowd control at last year's Super Bowl. The woman, an employee with Contemporary Services, has been on the job for 5 years. Houston police say Bennett forced his way through locked doors and then shoved that elderly woman in order to get on the field. Investigators say the woman sprained her shoulder and she had to see a doctor.
It's very offensive to me that a man that's supposed to be an example, a professional athlete, would think that it's okay to treat people like this.
Investigators say there is not video showing what happened.
But we had a police officer, Officer Morgan, who witnessed it.
Bennett plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, and on Twitter, the team acknowledged the indictment but offered no comment about the case or Bennett's future with the team. Michael Bennett has been an outspoken voice against excessive use of force by police, and he was one of the first NFL players to sit out of the national anthem. In fact, his parents, who live in the Houston area, have talked to KHOU 11 about that before. And last August, Bennett was detained by Las Vegas police after reports of shots fired at a club. Police released video to show no evidence that officers mistreated Bennett. This afternoon, with accusations that he mistreated an elderly paraplegic woman, police say this.
And we would ask Mr. Bennett to turn himself in.
So KHOU 11 has tracked down that elderly woman who's at the center of this case. She's now 67 and not interested in talking right now. She is still on the job working for Contemporary Services, that company describing her as an excellent employee whom they're proud to have on their team. Mia?
Such an unsettling accusation against Mr. Bennett. Melissa, thanks so much.
No, this is not an unsettling allegation against Mr. Bennett. This is a very satisfying indictment. This is evidence presented to a grand jury who found reason to bind the matter over for trial because of who Michael Bennett is and how he behaves toward other people, while he claims to be someone standing up for social justice. Social justice, by the way, is not justice. It is basically intimidation. It is the attempt to make people do what you want them to do, to believe what you want them to believe, and to make concessions to your ideology simply based on the idea that you say it is just when it has nothing to do with justice. The idea that is being floated about police brutality in America is an anecdotal argument that ignores the larger body of evidence regarding law enforcement and public interaction. It is excerptation. That's all it is. Let me find some examples that support my narrative, and I am going to go on with that. It's black police, it's black unarmed men getting shot by police. Really? When twice as many whites have to die at the hands of police, and at the end of the day we're talking about 1,200 people dying at the hands of police. I'm not trying to say that's good. It's terrible. But in a country where you have 40 to 70 million interactions between law enforcement and the public every year that 1,200 folks, less than 1,200 folks, are killed by police, the percentage is staggeringly small. It's not really a big deal, statistically speaking. The fact that twice as many white families have to suffer the pain of having a family member killed by police is ignored in all of this. I don't see a White Lives Matter protest. I don't see them blocking access to freeways, blocking access to sports arenas. I don't see any of that. Even though that would be the statistically more frequently occurring instance. Michael Bennett's a liar. Oh, well, we'll get to that. But now what we have is proof that persuaded a grand jury that Michael Bennett needs to be tried. And I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic about this almost as much as I am ecstatic that the other social justice warrior liar, Colin Kaepernick, remains unemployed. He's not playing professional football for anyone. I don't care that he's an activist. I don't care that he has money. I do not care about any of that. I care that he no longer has that platform, and I am ecstatic about that. If the world turns the right way, Michael Bennett may be denied a platform for his social justice nonsense because nobody wants to hear from you while you're serving a sentence for elder abuse. Nobody wants to hear your social justice nonsense. Now, for those who have forgotten that Michael Bennett is a liar, let's remember that Michael Bennett accused people. I mean, he went out and accused the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police of racism and profiling and mistreatment. And this happened back in August of last year at the fight. If I remember correctly, it was a fight between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. And here's an interesting thing. Outkick the coverage. Clay Travis wrote an article. Las Vegas police proved Michael Bennett lied about racism charges. Back on September 7th, I was the only person brave enough to point out something important. Michael Bennett was lying about most of the claims of racism he had leveled against Las Vegas police. As the rest of the sports media fell all over themselves to condemn the police, I actually reviewed the evidence and pointed out that Bennett's story didn't add up. And for that, I was ridiculed and called racist by thousands of people online. But guess what? When I know I'm right, I don't run from critics. I double and triple down. The title of my piece didn't tiptoe up to my opinion either. It was straightforward and direct. Michael Bennett is lying. Yesterday afternoon, the Las Vegas police, after reviewing 193 different videos of the night in question, released a 2-minute video that proves their officers didn't racially profile Bennett, didn't use excessive force, and treated Bennett with respect throughout the interaction. Bennett's defenders, a tiny group compared to the people who initially believed him, are complaining because this video is edited, but that's because it's spliced together from multiple cameras to give a coherent picture of what transpired that night. Now, here is, when you're talking about things in the sports and entertainment arena, TMZ has demonstrated themselves to be an authoritative source of information and a final say. And here is what they have to say about Michael Bennett's claims of police brutality and police misconduct when they encountered him back in August of 2017.
Police have released more video in the Michael Bennett Las Vegas takedown incident. You know, the one you saw the video on TMZ Sports, the one where Michael Bennett claimed he was racially profiled and held at gunpoint because he was black. Now cops are saying the video shows he's full of it. They're saying he's lying about that, and they have the video to prove it. Cops just released several minutes of video, including police body cam video and casino security video and footage from all over the street, which they say justifies why police chased after Michael Bennett and took him down to the ground in the early hours of August 27th, hours after the Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather fight. Now remember, you saw in our video, he was down on the ground, cop had a gun out, he was screaming, I didn't do anything wrong, and he claimed that he had no idea why he was taken down to begin with. Cops are saying that they arrived to the Cromwell Casino after reports of an active shooter and told everybody, get down to the ground. They saw Bennett crouch down, running through the casino and hiding behind a slot machine, and they dubbed that to be suspicious activity. When he went from behind the slot machine and left the door, he jumped over a gate, went down to the street, and cops chased after him. Now, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department says a 3-team unit that was inside the casino, comprised of 2 Hispanic officers and an African-American officer, made a quick decision. They said, oh my God, does he have a gun? Maybe. And decided to chase after him and detain him as a possible suspect. They did, but they say they believe that race was not a factor. They were never like, oh, there's a black guy, let's go get him. They said, there's a guy who's acting suspicious and ran out of the casino. We need to go detain him and see if he's a part of this incident that we're investigating. Once they got there, the video shows Bennett was demanding an explanation, had no idea why he'd been stopped, and the cops were trying to tell him, you did not obey orders inside of the casino, and that's why we thought you might be a suspicious person. He was saying, I was scared. I thought there was a shooting. I was just concerned about my daughters. I have 3 daughters. I want to get home. Ultimately, they determined he did nothing wrong, and they asked for IDs so they could, document the incident. He said, my name is Michael Bennett. I play for the Seattle Seahawks. Look it up. Cops did. They pulled up their cell phones and they Googled him, and they found out that he was indeed Michael Bennett of the Seattle Seahawks. Ultimately, they let him go. They told him that he was not under arrest, but they needed to detain him as part of the investigation, and he went home. Cops are now saying that after a thorough review, they do not believe the officers did anything wrong. They acted completely appropriately. They will not be disciplined, and it'll be interesting to see if they reach out to Michael Bennett and how Michael Bennett reacts to this news conference.
He lied. So I have a liar and an elder abuser as part of the social justice warrior movement. That makes me ecstatic. Why? Because the entire social justice warrior movement is fraudulent. It is not about justice. It is about intimidation. It is about trying to reshape society into something it's not supposed to be. It is part of the idea of the guilty until proven innocent movement that I spoke about in the last hour of the show. This is bogus, and it is exceptional to start taking down social justice warrior people on the basis of their character. I'm beyond ecstatic. This is outstanding. It is. Because you have to remember something else about the social justice warrior movement. It is full of people who do nothing. Michael Bennett plays a game with a ball. And his part of the game, he doesn't even interact with the ball. He doesn't touch the ball. He's not supposed to. Generally, he doesn't. Colin Kaepernick does nothing. He plays a game with a ball. Right now, he doesn't even play. LeBron James does nothing. These are not people who contribute to society. These are people who simply know how to do something with a ball and are paid and are compensated well for it. I can hear it now. Well, LeBron gives away a lot of money. He's not making any sacrifices here. When you make as much money as LeBron James in a year, 8 digits to the left side of the decimal point, giving $1 million away or putting kids through school is more like good publicity. It's not a statement of good. It really has changed what? Steph Curry, another one. What does he do? He plays with a ball when he's not hurt. I am done with social justice warriors who are pampered and rich for doing nothing other than playing games. I want somebody, if you're going to be an activist, show me that you're committed to the cause. Don't show me that the cause is convenient. Show me that the cause is worth fighting for. which also means I have no use for these teenagers who are now trying to institute gun control, because I already know they're being put up to it. I have a very good idea of who's behind it, because this takes money, and I know they don't have it, and there's no reason to believe that their parents have this type of money, but I know someone who does. Long story short, if you can start picking apart social justice warriors on the basis of their character, particularly the high-profile sports types, maybe you'll get this political correctness out of sports. That'll take a while. And maybe you'll force these people who claim they're for social justice to define it in terms that lines up with actual justice. And then we might see something that matters. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Last segment of the show, let's talk a little bit about marches and double standards, shall we? Let's start with the idea that this march is some great event that is expressing the opinion of everyone in the world. Because if you listen to Good Morning America on Monday, this is what they had to say about the marches.
We're going to move on now to those huge March for Our Lives rallies all across the country and world over the weekend. Hundreds of thousands taking to the streets calling for action to stop gun violence. The biggest rally there in D.C., where 11-year-old Naomi Wadley made a powerful speech about African-American women who are victims of gun violence, but their stories are not told. She had challenging words for lawmakers.
We know life isn't equal for everyone, and we know what is right and wrong. We also know that we stand in the shadow of the Capitol, and we know that we have 7 short years until we, too, have the right to vote.
Just one of the many powerful speeches over the weekend. Our senior congressional correspondent, Mary Bruce, she's here in the studio with us for more on the movement. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Robin. Well, in Washington and around the world, we saw hundreds of thousands of protesters demand gun control, survivors making passionate pleas, and young activists sending a clear warning to politicians. Beware, the voters are coming. Now, of course, what comes next is up to Congress. And right now, Republican leaders have little to no appetite to act on guns. Now, they have taken steps to shore up existing background checks, but it is highly unlikely we will see them take up any kind of sweeping new gun legislation. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, for instance, says he respects the views of the protesters, but that, quote, many other Americans do not support a gun ban. And for his part, the president this weekend remained silent on this issue.
So the students and many are looking toward the midterm elections. Will we see a real impact come November?
Yeah, Robin, there's no question that this could be a really major issue in these elections, which is something that we haven't seen in decades and is likely to put many Republicans on defense. But one thing is very clear. These young people are motivated. They are registering people to vote, and they're going to keep the issue of gun control front and center.
That is very, very clear. It's great to have you here in the studio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you.
Let's kind of break some of this down. Let's go back to the powerful speech by the 11-year-old. If you honestly think that the American people are going to listen to someone who's 11 years old, I'm sorry, you're 8 years removed from potty training and you haven't even gone through puberty yet, but you know what should happen 7 years from now when you vote, and you want us to basically be afraid of the prospect that you're going to vote. And that should motivate us now. Bishop, do you think that's what we should be thinking about right now?
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no. Hell to the no, no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no, no, to the no, no, no.
Exactly. I'm not trying to hear that foolishness either. This whole idea, in case you haven't missed it, is very one-sided. Bear in mind that there are students on the other side of this issue that seem never to show up on Good Morning America, seem never to show up on CNN. As a matter of fact, CNN shut them out from the town hall. There's students who wouldn't go along with the script that CNN supposedly wrote. CNN, of course, denies that it had a script, but they're not, you know what? CNN is not the most credible organization that's out there. This is a one-sided argument being put forward by those on the left who actually have control of the media. Now, I'm going to say this and people are going to get upset. Notice one thing increasingly. Whenever you hear these leftist arguments put forward on the news or reported on the news, you keep seeing women. Women are the ones doing the reporting. Interesting. Let that marinate for a while. And these women are leftists. Let that marinate for a while. They're pro everything that the left stands for. And they are now trying to tell you that the only thing that's going on out there are 11-year-olds and teenagers saying that guns need to go away and they need to keep the pressure on so that the legislators listen to them and maybe they'll take up gun control legislation. Really? You're missing this? You're not paying attention to this? I don't know why. Speaking of social justice warriors who act like females, Barack Obama had his own take on this March for Our Lives movement.
A number of the young students in this school, Parkland, organized a rally. They decided we're not going to be silent victims of the gun violence that is so pervasive in the United States. We're going to do something about it. And these are young people, they're 16, 17 years old. And today there was a march in Washington with hundreds of thousands of people. And these rallies were duplicated all around the world. And this was all because of the courage and effort of a handful of 15 and 16-year-olds who took the responsibility that so often adults had failed to take in trying to find a solution to this problem. And I think that's a testimony to what happens when young people are given opportunities. And I think all institutions have to think about how do we tap into that creativity and that energy and that drive, because it's there. It's just so often we say, wait your turn. And in the meantime, then that energy dissipates.
Yes, the whole idea is to go to those who are still being cared for by adults and have them tell the adults what should be done. And if we don't do that at the right time, the energy dissipates. Yes, it's called intergenerational angst. It is dealt with by every culture and has been dealt with by mankind throughout the years, through eons and all of world history, and it comes down to the same thing. Yes, you need to wait your turn because you're foolish. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child. You need to raise them, not be led by them. Oh, by the way, hey, you know what? Hey, Bishop, do you really think that a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds are the ones who organized this rally that swept through Washington, D.C. and around the world? You just think a bunch of teenagers did that? What's your opinion, sir?
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no. Hell to the no, no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no, no, to the no, no, no.
Exactly. This is nonsense. If you really want to know what this is about getting rid of the Constitution. Know this, if the Second Amendment is infringed, then the Constitution no longer becomes protection for the people. It becomes a weapon against the people. End of that discussion. And now they have found someone in the person of these teenagers to lead the charge. And the question is whether or not the American people will see it for what it is and resist it. To this point, I believe they are. I believe they do see it for what it is, and I don't think it's likely that any politician who tries to push this agenda is going to be long in office, and it will be rejected. There's also the issue of double standards. You may remember when they did the walkout in high schools I believe it was the week before or last week, that a teacher in California got suspended for asking whether or not the First Amendment right of those who wanted to do a similar protest against abortion would be supported by school administrators. And she got suspended with pay, but she got suspended, which kind of answers the question. Well, to follow up on that, there was a kid who said he wanted to do that and see what happened, and here's a report on that.
All we really need is to spread the word.
Tonight, new developments in the Rockland School walkout controversy. CBS 13 was first to bring you this story last week, and now a student is challenging the school's administration to let him organize a walkout to protest abortion. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Curtis May.
And I'm Adrienne Moore. CBS 13's Lamore Abrams spoke with that student and joins us now in the studio with his message. Lamore.
Adrienne and Curtis, it all started when his teacher was suspended last week after questioning if officials would support an anti-abortion walkout in the same way they encouraged the national school walkout against gun violence. Now, Brandon Gillespie is taking over the debate and pushing students to put the school protest policy to the test.
Be here!
Last week, they protested gun violence.
I first started talking about it last Wednesday.
This week, Rockland High School students are using social media to organize a pro-life walkout using the hashtag life.
To honor all the lives of aborted babies, pretty much, all the millions of aborted babies every year.
Brandon Gillespie says his history teacher inspired the idea. As thousands of students across the country walked out of class demanding strict gun laws in honor of the Parkland shooting victims,
here we are again.
Mrs. Benzel was placed on paid administrative leave when she asked students to consider whether there's a double standard in a national school walkout.
So I would like a conversation of when is too much, and are we going to allow this on the other side?
The principal here at Rockland High declined to meet with us for an on-camera interview, but a district spokeswoman tells us he will sit down with the student planning the abortion walkout, and that's not going over well with some of his peers.
But abortions aren't really anything that has to do with school or students here.
Narika Neve is the editor of the school newspaper, and in her posts, she's using the hashtag Enough is Enough to promote peace and take a stance against anything anti-abortion on campus.
They have their First Amendment. They can go protest about that anytime, anywhere.
It was a political protest.
But Brandon says protesting on school grounds is just the point.
I would like to see if there really is a double standard and what will come of that.
And he doesn't have a date for the protest, but he does with the principal. Their meeting is set for this Friday to be continued.
It has certainly started a discussion, and I imagine talk radio. This is a good topic for talk radio.
Especially conservative talk radio. Yes. Glenn Beck and another conservative talk radio show host, Armstrong and Getty, they're both supporting him.
Okay.
Interesting. All right, Lamore, thanks.
Did you hear that ridiculous statement from the editor of the high school newspaper? Abortion doesn't have anything to do with students in schools? Oh, really? Teenagers do not have abortions? Teenagers who are in high school don't have abortions? Teenage abortions do not kill more people than school shootings? Really? This is the lunacy that you're dealing with. This is the denial that you're dealing with. And how come there is a double standard? You could just go ahead and have this whole thing and everybody's on board to march against guns, but as soon as somebody wants to deal with what kills more than 1 million folks per year and has killed 55 million people since 1973, now, well, let's meet about that and see whether or not that, yes, there's a double standard. When you want to talk about what the left cares about, let's do that immediately. Let's put that into action. When you want to talk about what really matters, well, let's see whether or not that's really something that we should support. We don't want to sit there and upset too many people. That's what you're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with. We know that some of the children at Parkland are not anti-gun. We don't know how many because the press won't let us hear from them. They suppress them. They avoid them. They ignore them. We know that some among our teenagers in this country are not flaming leftists like soy boy David Hogg and buzzcut girl Emma Gonzalez. But they are pushed aside by union officials because pretty much everybody's working in public schools belongs to a union, and they have an agenda, and they are in league with progressives. So they don't want to hear from the children. And when teachers try to stand up for just being objective, they get put on paid leave. This is nonsense. You're going to have to resist the double standard. You're going to have to stand up for individual rights, which includes the right to have and keep and bear arms. You're going to stand up for that. And if you have to do that against a bunch of teenagers, then do it, because they don't vote. And their opinions really don't matter. When you care for yourself, I'll listen to you. As long as I still have to raise you and feed you and clothe you, you need to hear me much more than I need to hear you. And at 11 years old, I'm not trying to hear a thing an 11-year-old has to say. Unless they belong to me, and they better be responding to what I ask them to do. You're being mean. No, I'm not being mean. I'm being an adult. And that's for sure. God bless you. God keep you. Hope everything goes well for you. Stand up for your country. Stand up for your own rights. And remember, it gets better the more you participate. Until next week, may God bless. Take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.